Don Mazzella here for Small Business Digest. We have an interesting guest today. She came to us because someone said financial literacy, a lot of women don't do it. Well, Jessica Perrone is here to talk about how to do it and what you should do, and maybe teach us a little bit of what we need to know. Jessica, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
And Jessica, as we ask all of guests, first tell us a little bit about yourself, then what your company does, and finally a website.
Okay, and you'll ask me questions in between, right? That seems like an awful lot of talking.
That's fine. Much have you talk than me.
Wonderful, not a problem. So I'm Jessica Perrone, the founder of Her Financial IQ. And I like to start off with like three interesting things that maybe people wouldn't assume about me. And I think assumptions are kind of interesting nowadays. But one of the assumptions that is I'd like to put out there, or squash, I should say, is I'm actually the oldest of 8 children. And growing up, we had very little money for food, let alone the money conversations. So, with that said, one of those things that people don't realize about me is that I didn't grow up affluent. I didn't grow up having these money conversations. In fact, it's just through having amazing mentors in my life that I was able to learn everything that I know about personal finance and investing. So Don,
Yes, keep going.
oh, keep going. Oh, just keep going. Okie dokie. So what's interesting is that when I started Her Financial IQ, I didn't realize I was starting Her Financial IQ. And this is a really interesting story because I actually left the workforce. My ex-husband and I were building a financial news company together, and I left the workforce to try to make our marriage work. I decided, okay, I'm going to be a stay-at-home mom. I am going to try to put more effort into the family and the relationship. So I was trading at home. I was trading stocks, and over the years, I put together a really good strategy. But I was lonely. I missed being on Wall Street. I missed talking to the trading desks. I missed the energy. I mean, I loved being a stay-at-home mom. I love my kids, but I'm not a stay-at-home mom. I'm not the type of mom that likes to go and get her hair done and nails done. That's nice and everything. But I just needed more. I needed more out of my everyday life. And the trading was definitely something that kept my mind in the markets, but I was lonely as an individual trader. And so I decided that I wanted to put together a book club for female traders, a book club for female traders. And I couldn't find any female traders. So I said, okay, I live in an affluent neighborhood. There's a lot of stay-at-home moms that very had amazing jobs, amazing careers. Of course, they're going to want to learn how to trade and do something on the side, a side hustle as their stay-at-home moms. And so I went to the soccer fields, I went to the basketball courts, I went to the PTO meetings, and I was like, hey, I'm teaching women how to trade. And you wouldn't believe the anxiety that appeared on these women's faces. The rosacea just like trickled up their necks, and then they're like, "Oh, I can't do that. My husband does the finances, or my husband does all that. I can't do that." And I couldn't believe the response. Don, I could not believe the response because that's not how I grew up professionally. I grew up professionally learning how to manage everything myself. And so I said to myself, I said, maybe I should just teach women the basics of investing so that they can have confidence to advocate for themselves, whether it is with a financial advisor, whether it is a robo advisor, whether it is starting to put extra money away towards increasing your contributions to your 401k, or contributing more to a employee stock purchase plan. And so I started creating my first course, which was called Investing for Beginners. And so Investing for Beginners basically taught women, when you have a surplus, when you have monies to invest, how to go about doing that. And it was so eye-opening and so rewarding to have this course and teach the women. And at this point in time, I was actually teaching the women in group classes, like Zoom sessions. And I created Investing for Beginners, and then I created stocks and ETFs and stock market sectors. And then I did self-directed investing for beginners, which is like how to place a trade and whatnot. And then I also created a more macro and microeconomics course, which was stock market sectors. Because when you get to those levels, when you start wanting to invest on your own, you sort of have to understand the interrelatedness of the markets. So these are all the courses I developed, and I was teaching them in person. And I found that more and more women that were coming to my Investing for Beginners course with a lot of credit card debt. And it was at that point in time that I realized that I wanted to put together a course that taught women about the basics of personal finance, all the things that you want to get in a row before you start investing. And that is how I started my Before Investing course. And so the Before Investing course goes on to talk about your financial ducks, which is a term that I put together because I was trying to think of something that could speak to all generations, all demographics, all backgrounds. And me being a mom of 3 kids, 3 teens now, I have 2 in high school and 1 in college, who actually know the financial ducks. And it's actually a TikTok and a group messaging thing with my teens. They're like, we're getting our financial ducks in a row, Mrs. Perrone. And it's just adorable how they have all sort of like latched on to this concept of the financial ducks. So what are the financial ducks? Well, the financial ducks are basically the foundation, the personal finance foundation that you want to get in a row before you start investing. And one of the biggest things is bad debt and getting your bad debt under control. So you want to look at your bad debt, you want to look at your spending, you want to look at your budgeting, you want to look at your savings. You also want to look at putting together an emergency fund. And lastly, you want to be cultivating your credit score all along the way so that you can save money in those aspects as well. And it's funny because in hindsight, I was thinking about credit scores, and I was thinking about even my relationship with a credit score. And growing up, like I said, we didn't have money conversations. So I really didn't understand credit scores. And I was a firm believer in paying in cash. That was just the environment that I grew up in. My mom was an immigrant. And growing up, like I mentioned, we didn't have a lot of money, but she believed in paying cash for everything. And so even she didn't have the best credit score initially because she was paying cash for everything. So that sort of created that internal relationship with money, saying, hey, I got to pay cash for everything and I don't want to take out a lot of debt, which in the long run helped me out because when it came time to build a surplus and start investing at a young age, I was able to do that because I didn't have a lot of debt besides my student loans. My credit card debts were paid off. I try to pay off my credit card debts on a monthly basis. And that really helped me stay out of a lot of debt that a lot of this generation is getting themselves into. I've been talking a lot, Dawn. What do you think so far?
As the thing that's interesting, I'm going to stop you right there for three things. Number one, uh, what's your website right now?
Oh, sure thing. My website is herfiniq.com. So it's her, H-E-R, fin like the fin of a fish, IQ as in what's your IQ.com. And my social handles are the same, herfiniq.com.
Okay, have you written a book yet?
I have not written a book. I should write a book, shouldn't I?
Yes, but let's stop a minute because you opened so many doors that I, as a reporter, would always. The number one is you said you trade stocks, not oh, professionally. Where?
Oh, my profession or trading stocks?
Trading. Where did you trade stock? What
So
company?
oh, I didn't. It was self-directed. So it was self-directed
I thought
in
you
my
were on a
TD
trading.
Ameritrade account and my Fidelity account.
No, but I thought you were on a trade. You left you left working life to try to save marriages, which
Oh,
usually.
yes, yes. So my ex-husband and I built a financial news company together.
Yeah.
And when I started out, I was on the sales and marketing side. And in order to really work with the Wall Street traders, I had to learn how to trade. So I went about, I did. I'm self-taught in how to trade. And I went about learning how to trade so that I could sell my products to the Wall Street traders. And I ended up working with the sell side globally, New York, Chicago, Boston, London, Paris, and Asia. It was quite an amazing experience. And I had so many mentors, and it really was just the most amazing education that anyone could ever have.
So in effect, I'm going to say something based on I'm doing this show for 20 years. But if a woman leaves a job to save a marriage, it usually doesn't work.
You're
Yeah.
absolutely right. You're absolutely right. You're spot on.
I'm not. It's people have been a woman especially have been telling me that for 20 years.
Well, what's
Yeah,
interesting is we get into these caretaker roles as women. It's a fact. Like you want to take care of the family, you want to take care of the relationship. Also, it has to do with me just believing in death do us part. I entered into marriage, and gosh darn it, I was going to be in it until the end, until it just was so apparent that it just wasn't going to work.
I always use the line. I always thought I'd love you forever. I didn't know forever ended today.
Oh, oh my goodness.
It's no one but true.
You're out. Yes, that is funny. May I use that? May
Well,
I use that? And I'll say it's from Mr. Don.
it was actually something I wrote 20 years ago. When I did one of my first interviews. It was a long story. But now, having said all that, you're sitting there and you're helping people. In my audience, most of my audience are people who are running companies.
Yes.
If our uh, um, uh, demographics are correct, and they're pretty good. So, having said that, what are some of the things you would suggest to a woman who's now at the point where her company has turned profitable? And by
That's
the way, I don't think it applies only to women. I think it applies to men as well. They don't know what to do with success.
so when you say success, like so my mind keeps going to all these things. Like what is success,
Well,
right? Like on so many levels as a business, success could be like making your first $100, it could be making your first $1,000, it could be so what are we going to define as success, Don?
well, there's two. If your company lasts 5 years, generally it should keep succeeding. And two is if you throw off money. If you at the end of the year you have $1 more than you did the at the end of the previous year, your success.
Okay,
That's
so are we paying ourselves through all this?
well, that's the point. That's the other point. When you start paying yourself, what do you do with the money that that company is paying you?
Absolutely. And there's so many, I mean, it really depends on where that individual is financially, right? Because doing a startup, building a company is hard on yourself, frequently hard on yourself financially, right?
Hmm.
Especially when you are not paying yourself. I know that a lot of business owners are seeing that first dollar, but personally, they are not in the greatest financial shape. Would you agree with that statement, Don?
Generally, generally, they're on average about $125,000 worth of credit card debt. And
Yes.
that's a figure that in our latest survey, that's what they said. They were $125,000 in debt when they turned their first profit.
Yes. And that's such a hard situation to be in
Mm.
because you have the compounding interest and the compounding interest of $125,000 on a credit card. I mean, that is, I couldn't imagine the stress and the anxiety of someone having $125,000 of debt on a credit card. Um, I mean, there's so many things that I would want to say to that person. I mean, I would say, and I mean, and this is sort of where the financial ducks comes in. So one of the biggest things that we're trying to do is pay down our bad debt, right? But it's also a game of interest rates. So this is theoretical. I mean, there's so many ways to do this, but theoretically, you have $125,000 in debt. You would want to put your profits to that, but you also want to be dealing with that debt, right? So, for example, you could do a consolidation loan to try to get down that interest rate. Um, oh my goodness, there are also places called the FEC, the Financial Empowerment Centers. And what they are very good at doing is helping individuals that are super duper in debt, like almost on the verge of bankruptcy debt, and really work to come up with payment plans, consolidation loans. They have so many different tricks to help an individual try to get that credit card debt under control.
But remember, in our audience who's just become a profitable company, they don't qualify because they do have income, they do have prospects. Um, uh, I guess let's turn it around. Let's say that we're in the seventh year of our business, and now after I pay all my expenses and pay down, starting to pay down my 125, I have $25,000 left. What should I do with it?
So what is the interest rate on that 25,000?
Let us say right now, what is it, about 3 or 4% if you put it in the bank?
Well, interest rate.
Yeah.
If is it a credit card interest rate? Are you paying 18%? Are you paying
No,
20%?
this is where the 25% is free cash flow. So you've paid down your debt, you have no debt, your 125,000 has gone away. You're now sitting there with $25,000 that you can do, that you can hold on to, you can invest, you can say
Okay, I see what you're saying. I was thinking that you said that you still had
no,
a debt of
right.
$25,000. Well, what I hope is that as an individual starts making profit, that they will start putting monies towards their retirement account, right? Towards their emergency fund. And so we've paid off the bad debt. I'd put money towards an emergency fund, but I'd also all the while have been putting money towards my retirement account. So so putting chunks into something isn't really successful, right? It's the as you see the profit coming. So, for example, like you said, you can have your emergency fund in a high yield savings account, and that high yield savings account is 5%.
Hmm.
Okay, is around 5% if you go on bankrate.com right now, the APY. So you can be receiving at least a 5%, around a 5%. I mean, different types of savings accounts have different types of yields. The more traditional accounts like are yielding like around 3%, like you're saying. But as I said, the high yield savings accounts around 5%. So then you want to, all the while, as you're starting to make profits, start putting monies towards your retirement accounts as well. And this will allow you to start saving. Again, you want to do contributions over time because you get different points in the markets. Okay. So like putting everything at one time doesn't necessarily make sense. It's the slow trickle in. And then we want to start thinking about life stages. What are we saving for? Is that in, and again, the money voyage is personal. So we're thinking about our stages. We're thinking about, okay, so now that I'm out of debt, do I have a car? Do I want a car? Do I want a house? Do I want, do I have a child that's going to college? So we have to start thinking about our life stages and where we are going, depending on where we want to allocate monies as well. So you have your emergency funds, high yield savings account, you have your you're allocating to your retirement account, and then you have additional savings that you can start thinking about where you want to put it. If you're saying, oh, you know what? I want to have access for this in like 5 years, maybe a robo-advisor might be an interesting thing to consider. But anything like short-term goals, like buying a house or buying a car, short-term goals, excuse me, short-term goals, those are best kept in high yield savings accounts and CDs, depending on the term. So we're just thinking in time, and we're thinking about how to allocate monies based on when you will need access to those monies. I hope that answers your question, Dawn.
Again, we're talking about various things. Uh, let's stop a minute. What's your website and how people can learn more?
Oh, thank you so much, Dawn. It's herfiniq.com, and my social media handle is at herfiniq.
Well, now we're sitting here. One of the interesting things that just came across my desk is that a lot of people are starting businesses late in life, 40s and 50s. What do you say to someone who's jumping off the cliff at a later point in life? How do you protect yourself a little bit
So,
financially?
well, I feel honestly, especially for women, later in life is a great time to start. And why am I saying that, Dawn? Well, just thinking from personal experience, my kids are older. I have two in high school and one in college. They don't need me all the time anymore, but I like the flexibility of being there for them. So, about when I was going through my divorce, I had a big choice to make. I had to choose whether I was going to go back to Wall Street or whether I was going to stay her financial IQ route and stay at home and have the flexibility to be there for my kids. I had done the commute to New York City. When I was working on Wall Street, I was on the 5:45 bus in the morning. And then I would take the 4 o'clock home right after the 4:15 home right after the close. And then I'd sleep on the commute home, and then I was there for the kids, but I was running, and I really ran myself ragged. And I was like, you know what? It's so hard to be a working mom and really have time for yourself and um, really sort of feed your soul, to say, feed your essence of who you are emotionally, physically, mentally. So, and this is actually an interesting story, Don. I remember having a conversation with one of my mentors, and I was having this exact conversation. Do I go back to Wall Street, or do I continue with her financial IQ? And this was right in the beginning of things. And I remember leaving that conversation with no clarity whatsoever. I was like, you know what? I have more questions. Have you ever had a mentor conversation where you left it and you're like, oh my goodness, there's no clarity. I only have more questions for myself. And I don't know who out there thinks or about signs from the universe, but I'll never forget that night, because I went home and I checked my social media, and on my social media was a message from a woman that had been following me. No joke. And in that message, and I'm going to get a little verklempt here, because in that message, she said, "Thank you so much for everything you're doing. I made $5,000 in the market, and I'm so grateful to you." And I'll never forget that moment, because that's when I said to myself, aha, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. It was like the sign I needed to continue on with her financial IQ. And every day since then has been so rewarding. And am I making an exorbitant amount of money? No, but I am not losing money, which is a good thing, right? And I'm helping so many people. So what I wanted to say about, and I know I kind of got off on a tangent here, but what I really wanted to say is, when you have the ability later in life to go out and start a business, follow your heart, follow your soul, follow what you are good at. And if you can do good while you're doing it, then you can also feed your heart and soul. So that would be one thing that I'm saying. But I also say, don't go into a lot of debt initially. There's so many ways to start a company that is cost effective. And I would say, prove the concept before going large scale. I would also say, use technology. And I feel that one of the reasons why her financial IQ courses gained traction was because it was launched right around COVID. And when Zoom became mainstream and people were accepting Zoom for coursework, before that, everything was done in person. Meetings was done in person, courses were done in person. So it really helps with flexibility. So technology is your friend. The other aspect of technology that is your friend is that there is a lot of ways to have taskers. And what do I mean by taskers? Like people that will do jobs for you as you need them, so you don't have to hire full-time employees. So, for example, when I was starting up her financial IQ, I hired a logo designer. Now I have a background of graphic design, but I was like, you know what? This is just too close to me. This is just too close to me. And the site that I use is Upwork. And so I did a post on Upwork for logo design, And initially and you are able to see all the workers as they are quoting for your various jobs. And I was able to actually um, uh, hire a woman in Eastern Europe who gave me her financial IQ logo, and I was able to do it super cost effective. And then like I hired a copywriter on there. At the time, I had a really hard time doing everything, as a small business owner, you try to do everything. And there is,
I'm gonna have to stop you because we're running out of
oh,
time.
I'm so sorry.
Uh,
See, done.
no, why? It was really good. One more time, your website, it's just Perrone.
herfiniq.com
Say it
and
again, because I walked over you. Say it again.
herfiniq.com.
Oh, you've got to come back. Hold on.
Oh, I would love to come back. I feel like the interview was a little scattered, though. I hope you don't mind that I went down all these rabbit holes.
Much rather,
Um,
much rather do it that way because uh, we learn a lot more. Thank you.
oh, thank you so much, Don. I would love to come back whenever you would like to have me back. Yeah, like it's been such an amazing journey, her financial IQ. I've learned so much on so many levels, especially on the back end of building a business and doing it cost effectively. So maybe that's going to be our next interview, Don, how Jessica built her fin IQ on a budget.